I think you know what carbon offsets are. Basically, when you cannot reduce your emissions, typically for businesses, corporations, industries, let's say steel and cement, then you can pay someone else who can put away some carbon for you because they have room in their operations, or they will go and plant trees or do something else that takes out carbon for you. And there's always been a debate about whether this works or not, and how the carbon markets can include carbon offsets and how much cheating there can be, etc. And there are many issues. So, this is a review article from Annual Reviews of Environment and Resources. Are carbon offsets fixable? Basically, it's saying they are not working, so can they be made to work? And it's a long article that discusses all the issues about how carbon offsets should be able to prove additionality, which means additional carbon is being sequestered away compared to what would normally happen by the offsetter, let's say. And there are various other details that I won't go into, but it's a nice article. We'll just take the abstract and then jump to the summary points that they provide a nice bullet points which we can go through. Okay, so with that in mind, it's a nice article, long article, beautiful set of references that you can follow up with if this topic is of interest to you. The article provides a systematic review of the literature on carbon offsets, a meta-analysis of sorts. A growing number of studies have found that the most widely used offset programs continue to greatly overestimate their probable climate impact, often by a factor of 5 or 10 or even more. Obviously, there's a lot of dishonesty involved. Credit quality has remained a problem since the inception of carbon credits, despite repeated efforts to address the core challenges of additionality, leakage, double counting, environmental injustice, verification, and permanence. So if some offsetter is sequestering carbon for you, it has to be additional, as I mentioned, plus it cannot leak, has to be leak proof for the promised time, which is permanence. You cannot count it in two different places. You sequester carbon, and that can only be counted once. Environmental injustice, whether the way it is being done is equitable, or is it hurting someone's life, livelihoods, whatever. Verification is always important, monitoring, verification, reporting, etc. Combined, these issues have led many to conclude that overcrediting in carbon offsets is an intractable problem. These challenges helped stall the rapid growth in the voluntary carbon market, or VCM, earlier this decade. They weren't renewed focus on in the wake of COP29, where 200 nations significantly advanced the effort begun with the Paris Agreement to create the rules governing a global compliance market for carbon credits. But COP29 did not substantially address the quality problem, creating the risk the Paris compliance market will be rife with overcrediting and other problems, and that the volunteer carbon market could undermine the Paris market if it operates in a parallel universe. We recommend that all stakeholders begin focusing on high integrity, durable carbon dioxide removal and storage, while recognizing that the recent literature has raised the question of whether durable means 100 years, 1,000 years, or longer. Ultimately, we find that many of the most popular offset project types feature intractable quality problems. We should focus on creating rules to find and fund the relatively few types of high quality projects, while employing alternative finance and strategies such as the contribution claims for the critical projects in conservation, renewable energy, and sustainable development. Essentially, offsets have to be clearly defined, monitorable, permanent, no leakage, equitable, etc. Right? So let's jump to it's a nice long paper, as I said, but I'll jump to the summary points. I will just read them. Uh, Carbon credits in both voluntary and compliance markets face seemingly intractable issues, leading to rampant overcreating and undermining the global climate progress. Compliance markets are where a particular industry is required to bring its emissions down to a certain level. If it cannot do it because of irreducibility in the process, like cement always claims, or because they're unable to electrify the system, etc., then they can do carbon trading so that they emit excess of their requirements or their limits, and somebody else will emit less by that much. Okay, the most severe issues are non-additionality, impermanence, leakage, double counting, perverse incentives, and the gameability of crediting systems where bad actors have been able to routinely circumvent even well-designed rules. Profit motive can lead companies and businesses to do fairly crooked things, but non-additionality means you are not really doing extra things to sequester more carbon. You are just doing what you would have done anyways, like maintaining a forest, protecting against deforestation, or whatever else. But additionality would mean you would demonstrably do more carbon sequestration than you would otherwise. So the burden of proof is often very difficult. This is why, as I've pointed out in another podcast, US farmers don't bother with clean development mechanism and additional soil sequestration because they find the paperwork to be too overwhelming and not worth the incentives they are given in terms of payments for carbon sequestration. These intractable problems have persisted despite more than 2 decades of efforts at market reform and seem unlikely to be resolved in the foreseeable future by ongoing interventions by international and or non-state actors. Irrespective of their climate impact, carbon credits demonstrate a pattern of major environmental justice violations. You have to read up on what exactly they are referring to. However, many projects are championed by local communities, indigenous groups, and conservationists. So you have to be careful about what the indigenous people are doing that can be credited for additional carbon sequestration, or even communities. Okay, you want to incentivize people to do carbon sequestration, if even if it is through offsets, with all the caveats for ensuring additionality and permanence. After nearly a decade of negotiations, COP29 launched the Paris Agreement's global compliance markets for carbon credits in the form of a bilateral pathway and a credit-based successor to the Clean Development Mechanism. But the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change did not substantially address quality problems, creating the risk the market will be rife with overcrediting, uh, the risk that the market will be rife with overcrediting and other shortcomings. The way the British write the proper English versus what makes it more readable are always a bit problematic. Okay, the voluntary carbon market could undermine the UNFCCC approaches. We recommend urgently phasing out non-CO2 removal of CDR offsets over the next decade, especially if they lack a corresponding adjustment. Going forward, all offset markets should prioritize developing high-integrity, durable CDR (carbon dioxide removal) and storage, while recognizing that the recent literature has raised the question of whether durable means 100 years, 1,000 years, or longer. Future research and investment is necessary to understand what role and at what scale CDR can play in helping meet global climate goals and limiting climate change. So ultimate test always comes in monitoring global emissions, because a ton anywhere is a global ton. So you have to make sure that we are peaking and going down in terms of the total emissions. Okay, so it's very brief, and I am purposefully keeping it brief because it's an important topic, but I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty details of what's going wrong. So just remember that carbon offsets are not working great right now, especially the volunteer carbon markets. Under the Paris Agreement, there is a framework which may be better managed. You can read up. So we have to bring them together to make sure that all offset activities are solid, robust, and measurable for additionality and permanence, etc. Okay, let's leave it here.